So this is an honest, long-term, 4 years, over 55,000 miles review of the BFGoodrich KO2s. And if you stick around to the end, I got a crazy fact about this actual set of tires that you probably won't believe. Before we get into the review, I just want to say two things. First of all, I'm not a tire expert. I did do my research before buying this set, but I am nowhere near an expert. And second, the most important part in my opinion, my set of KO2s are on a 2006 Lexus LX 470, also known as the Toyota Land Cruiser, and it is all-time four-wheel drive. I think that's an important thing to take into account coming from my experience and my reviews of the KO2s. First of all, I just want to go over why I even bought KO2s. Let's be honest, tires are very expensive, and I did a lot of research before actually purchasing these KO2s. At the time of when I bought this set, I was living in Washington State. At that time, I did know that I was going to start traveling all over the US, all over Canada, and most recently Mexico. And I knew I needed a tire that can do it all and not leave me stranded on the highway. After weeks and weeks of research, I was realizing that KO2s are exactly what I needed. And at the time, I was also looking up the #1 seller for all-terrains in Washington State to Idaho to Utah to all the states that I would be traveling to. And I kept seeing that KO2s are the #1 seller. They had a lot of great reviews online, and I feel like for them to be a #1 seller, there has to be a reason. So the set I have on my truck are the BFGoodrich Baja Champion KO2s. These are 275/70 by R18, which translates to 33.2 inches in diameter. And these are also load range E. It's an E-rated tire, which all that means is it has a higher load rating per tire, which is great for heavy trucks, or in my case, a heavy Land Cruiser. There are pros and cons to getting the E-rated, no matter what tire it is. At the time of when I purchased this, there's no other all-terrain that has a 10-ply tire with 3-ply sidewalls. They're all 10-ply and 2-ply. And personally, I wanted a really reliable tire to where I don't have to be on the side of the road, especially when I'm like 1,000, 2,000 miles away or in the middle of nowhere in BLM or on a trail and have any issues. So I really wanted a heavier duty tire. Because it has 10-ply and 3-ply on the sides, it is much heavier in the all-terrain class. So let's first just start talking about on-road performance. When I bought this rig, it came with brand new, really high quality road tires. So I knew exactly how this truck performed with those tires on road. When I got these KO2s installed, I honestly did not notice much of a difference. And the ride quality didn't change much. It felt a little firmer. Again, these are KO2s, they're E-rated and they're heavier. So all I felt at that time was just a little firmer feel to the road. And I have to say, it's one of my favorite things about this tire, because the biggest thing when buying KO2s or mud terrains is the loss of ride quality on your daily truck or on the truck that you're going to drive 800 miles to Baja, where most of your miles on any of your trips is actually going to be on the road. But there was absolutely no road noise still to this day after 55,000 miles and the tread wearing down. I have no complaints to give on this tire when driving on the road. And let's start talking about how this performed off-road. So let's talk off-road performance on the KO2s. When I bought these tires, I was living in Washington State, and I took it on so many trails out there, and it performed so well. But where these tires really stood out to me is when I lived in Moab, and I took this truck on every trail you could think of. The performance of the KO2s on rocky trails like in Moab, it always impressed me. Being in a lot of off-road groups, a lot of my friends, they all have 35s, 37s, 40s, mud terrains, bunch of different tires. And having 33.2, point 2 is pretty important, these tires never really let me down. So with these tires, they're on factory Toyota rims. They're not bead grip, they're not bead lock at all. I always air down to about 18, 20, depending on what I'm doing. If I'm doing obstacles, I like to stay around 20 with this setup. If it's just sand or beach, or I know I'm not doing any obstacles, I will go lower to like 15, sometimes 10. The only time I ever had an issue with these tires was 100% my fault. I was doing Poison Spider with a really good group of people, and I accidentally aired down my tires to about 14, I believe. It was either 14 or 13 and a half, which with factory wheels and doing the obstacles I was doing, you're absolutely not supposed to go that low. And on top of that, I did do a maneuver where it was a little sketchy. I pressed the gas a little too hard, and I'll have the video on screen, and these tires debeaded. But being with a good group of people, they got the tire back on the wheel and set the bead in minutes. Another really important factor to look into when you're looking at KO2s or other all-terrains or KO3s or whatever tire you're wanting is the importance of a strong sidewall. These tires are absolutely beaten up and they've never let air out. I've never had a flat. You can see so many gashes, pretty deep gashes on the sidewalls, on the exterior and the interior of the tires, where you can literally put your finger in. Some are pretty unbelievable, where I still don't understand why I don't have a flat, and I've been driving 20,000 plus miles with these gashes in there. And again, most of that is all how I drive. Sometimes I like driving a little fast, whether it's just a BLM or trail. I go 20, 30, 40 sometimes. But these gashes on the sidewall are 100% just me taking an improper line or not moving a rock or not paying attention. But so far, it's, like I said, unbelievable how many gashes and chunks are missing from these sidewalls. If this wasn't KO2s, I 100% believe I would have never been able to drive off these certain trails with these gashes and chunks missing out of my tire. So let's talk about winter performance. Personally, I've only done snow wheeling a handful of times, whether it was in Washington, Utah, and Colorado, and Montana. And I personally have never had that many issues with this setup and my truck. It could be mainly driving style and if you're airing down or not. The type of snow I've been in have been anywhere around 2 inches to like 8 inches, and I never had an issue with these. But what I do often with this setup is I live in Colorado and go to Utah often. And many times, whether it's driving through the pass to get to Denver or just driving to Salt Lake, there's always snow on the roads during the winter times. And I care a lot about my safety, and that was one thing I really looked into when buying these tires. So far, they've performed really well. These KO2s and having snow on the roads, I've never slid, I've never lost traction, I've never slid into a ditch. Overall, I'm very happy with the winter performance of these KO2s. And maybe a factor that you really need to think about is when you get all-terrains, you got to remember this is not a snow tire. You got to just drive smart. Don't drive 85 miles per hour because it has the snow badge on it or because you have studded snow tires. I personally think the most important thing when driving in the wintertime, whether it's on-road or off-road, is how you drive, then your tires. So keep that in mind. And overall, I've been very happy with these in the wintertime. So let's talk about how these perform on wet roads. I've seen a lot of mixed reviews and handful of videos of one-year reviews of these tires where they absolutely hate this tire on wet roads. And again, personally, I've never had a negative experience. And I don't know if it's just because I have a Land Cruiser, all-time four-wheel drive, or it's a combo of the two, of the truck and the tire. I have driven on thousands and thousands of miles of wet roads. Not a single time I've ever lost traction. And I probably shouldn't say this on camera, but in certain areas where it's pouring rain, like Utah and Colorado have some crazy storms. And in some areas where there's no ditch, it's very open, no cars, there's no barriers, it's just a fully open, safe place, quote unquote safe. I've personally tried to hydroplane my truck because I want to find out at what speed when I hit a puddle, a large puddle, small puddle, will I lose traction? And whether that was going 75, 80, or just pressing the gas and flooring it over a large puddle, I have never hydroplaned and never lost traction. Overall, the wet performance has been, and there's going to be a repeated thing I keep saying, impressive, because overall the wet performance has been very impressive. Having all the siping and the material this tire is made out of, I think that is one of the biggest reasons why this performed so well on wet roads. And performance on wet roads is one of the biggest factors that did push me towards the KO2s, because there's a lot of other all-terrains, whether it's the reviews and rating systems on Discount Tire, Costco, or other tire websites, that had a lower rating for wet performance. Let's talk about performance in sand. Having the really good tread pattern, the very strong sidewall. I was always airing down to single digits when I was on the sand or beach, whether it was the beaches in Oregon, the sand in Utah, or most recently, Baja. These performed very well. I was able to air down to single digits all the time, and never once was I stuck. And I think it's really important to point out that my truck is very heavy. I'm about 7,300 pounds, which is about 1,200 over factory. And having really good tires when you're in the sand with the heavy rig is very important. That weight really does push you down and sink you in. A handful of times, I was able to easily get out myself in situations where I would stop and the truck would sink in a little bit, or I'm going uphill and stop uphill, which you're not supposed to do. And in those very few situations where I was stuck, all I did was put it in reverse, back up like 3 or 4 inches, and then put it in drive and just drive through it. But overall, this tire performed excellent in sand. So this is the part I don't think a lot of people are gonna believe me, but if you're a close friend of mine, you know this is 100% true. I bought these tires brand new in 2022. It is now 2026. I have 4 years, 55,000 plus miles of heavy usage off-road and on-road. These have never been rotated a single time. Let me explain why. Having a Land Cruiser, I have IFS suspension. When you get larger tires, you need to bring out the tires a little more to clear from the suspension components and the fenders and just everything. So I got SLE spacers. They're the highest quality hub-centric spacers. They're much safer and reliable than other spacers that are not hub-centric or cheaply made. But tire shops do not care. So what happened was I started this long road trip and I didn't bring an off-road jack and proper equipment to rotate my own tires. And after a certain amount of miles, I called a shop, I made an appointment, I drove there, and within 5 minutes, they took my wheel off, they're gonna start rotating the tires. And the second the worker saw the spacers, he called me over and apologized that due to the spacers and liability, they are not allowed to rotate or touch the tires at all. And so they put it back on and that was it. I tried everything. I called so many different shops, whether it was a franchise or non-franchise, and nobody would touch a truck with spacers. And at that point, I told myself, it is what it is. I'll just keep driving. It's gonna ruin the tires, but I don't have really an option. And shockingly enough, the tread wear on all 4 tires that have never been rotated a single time are so even. There's no cupping, there's no uneven wear. It's kind of unbelievable. And again, I do have all-time 4-wheel drive. That doesn't mean that you don't have to ever rotate your tires. You definitely have to rotate your tires, and there's a certain method to it. The fact that these have worn so evenly and never been rotated a single time, do not make any road sounds, it's kind of crazy. From based off my research, not rotating your tires on this exact truck on all-time 4-wheel drive Land Cruiser, there has to be uneven wear from the back two and the front two, but so far it's even and never rotated a single time. I might be the first person to ever reach 60 or 70,000 miles on unrotated tires. So after driving with these tires for over 4 years and 55,000+ miles, taking it all over Canada, US, Mexico, all different types of terrains, wet, snow, sand, mud, on-road, off-road, would I buy these again? And my answer is absolutely. If you're looking for a tire that does it all and does it pretty well, and it's your daily, I don't have a single complaint to say about these tires. I've been blown away by all of its performances. I personally know a lot of people who've had KO2s for over 15 years and they only buy KO2s to this day. For what I use my truck for, I definitely want to stay with 10-ply. That's saved me countless of times, but I still haven't decided whether I want to stay with KO2s or move to KO3s. Overall, BFGoodrich KO2s or the all-terrain line have been very impressive. There are pros and cons from going to KO2 to KO3, but the main thing for me is I want to save a little bit of weight on all 4 corners of my truck, and I want to go skinnier. And there are not many size options to go skinny. Like a true pizza cutter is 10 inches, 9.5 inches. I have found like 12, but I really want to test out skinny long term. And in my opinion, a proper pizza cutter tire, a skinny tire, is 10 or less inches in width. And I hope someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see any KO2s for sale that are that width. They're always wider. Anyways, that's my honest, very long-term review of BFGoodrich KO2s that have never been rotated in 55,000 miles. If y'all have any questions on my setup, the tires, or anything, please comment down below, and I appreciate you for watching.